welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Today on Gracefully Graying, we will be discussing issues involving guardianship and elder care mediation with my guest, Charity Burke, who is the Executive Director of the Oakland Mediation Center, which is a wonderful institution here in Oakland County. Charity, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, why don't you tell us about the Oakland Mediation Center and what it does?
Oakland Mediation Center is a 501c3 nonprofit, volunteer-based community dispute resolution program. So we are one of 17 community dispute resolution program centers across the state of Michigan. We service Oakland County. We provide mediation services, legal services, and education and training services. And we could not do all of the amazing things that we do across the county without our volunteers. They are the lifeblood of our organization that keeps this organization going.
Charity, what are your duties as the Executive Director?
My duties are to run the operations of the center, to make sure that we are running efficiently, that we are meeting the needs of the community, of our clients, our volunteers, making sure that all departments and operations are running smoothly. I make sure that we stay within budget. I'm in charge of our strategic planning and making sure that we are heading down the path of our vision. We have a 5-year vision and strategic plan, and making sure that I am promoting the program and growing our programs and partnering with appropriate organizations to further the mission throughout the county.
Charity, tell us what is involved in guardianship and elder care mediation.
As far as what is involved, from start to finish, we typically would get a referral, and then we do an intake where we make sure that we are aware of all of the parties that are involved, who needs to be at the table. Does the person that's being discussed have capacity to be a part of the conversation, making sure that they are part of the conversation if they're able to do so. We make sure that we schedule a mediation as appropriate for all parties involved so that anybody who needs to be there can be there, and that we're performing the mediation with a medium that is accessible to everybody, to make sure, whether that be in person, virtually, over the phone. Then we hold a mediation and we go through information sharing process, having everybody kind of create an agenda for what is important for them to discuss. And we generate some options, evaluate those options, and hopefully come to an agreement where everybody has a say in crafting that agreement and what that's going to look like. And so everybody buys into it and walks away, maybe not having everything that they came to the table wanting, but at least walking away with everyone's needs being met. Most importantly, the person that's being discussed.
Let's talk about a scenario. I mean, I've mediated for many, many years, and often in a mediation, in the legal arena, especially in family law, it was usually done with 2 attorneys and respective clients. And with regard to the elder care and guardianship area, are attorneys involved, or is usually just the participants themselves?
They can be involved. We mediate with both scenarios. So in many cases, attorneys are involved, and their role in the mediation is to serve as an advocate for who they're representing and a subject matter expert for what the laws are for whatever topic may be being discussed. There are also situations where people don't have an attorney representing them, and they come in to participate in mediation. So we can accommodate either scenario.
Now, when you're mediating, is it usually with everyone involved in the same room, or are there separate rooms? And I guess now, as we're doing more and more on Zoom, it would be different too. So why don't you take us through some of these scenarios for our viewers?
So there's several different scenarios that can take place. We do some pretty thorough, complex screening in the intake process. We have a staff person contact every party that's going to be a part of the mediation, and every case gets a domestic violence screening process that's done, making sure that everybody's going to be safe, getting an idea for who's comfortable being in the same room, who's not being comfortable in the same room. And then we customize the program, the mediation here at Oakland Mediation Center for each case and what we think is going to be the best fit. Ideally, we try to keep everybody in the room as much as possible, or in the virtual room as much as possible, because we feel that we have the best open communication. But there are scenarios and situations where people just aren't comfortable, or things will get escalated if they're in the same room. And in that case, we'll have them together whenever we can, if possible, or we'll have them in separate rooms, and the mediators will go back and forth between those two rooms. So it really is situational based and on a case-by-case basis, making sure that we meet the needs and customize a plan of action for that mediation that we think is going to result in the highest likelihood for an agreement.
Tell us about the training that is involved for someone to mediate these types of cases.
There's quite a bit of training at Oakland Mediation Center. We are very careful. We don't just take any warm body here. So we have a very robust training program. We require our mediators to go through at least a 40-hour civil training, or a 40-hour domestic relations training with an 8-hour domestic violence screening training. I prefer that our guardianship mediators go through both, because I think there are skill sets that you can learn in both of those trainings. In addition, we have developed a guardianship training that has just been approved by the State Court Administrative Office. So our mediators go through that advanced training. If they have been on our roster for more than a year or two, I require them to go through at least 4 hours of continuing advanced education every year, because it's a soft skill. If you don't use it, you lose it. And if you're not staying current, then you can't perform at your best. So those are the requirements. In addition to that, if you are an attorney or have a master's degree in dispute resolution, you are required to do 2 observations and co-mediate with a seasoned mediator for at least 1 case. If you don't have one of those degrees, then we require you to do 40 hours of mediation experience. We call it our practical experience program, where you're mediating under the supervision of staff and seasoned mediators to get that experience before you can handle these more complex cases, such as the guardianship cases.
How does someone refer or open a case in this area?
There are a few different ways that you can open a case. You could go to our website, www.mediation-omc.org. You can email us at info@mediation-omc.org. Or you could give us a call, and you can talk to a gentleman named Joe Considine, who is currently the team lead for this program. Our phone number is 248-338-4280, and Joe's extension is 212. And you just call or email and say a brief description of what your situation is, and the brief description of the background, your name, your contact information. And then Joe will get back with you and get all the vital information and start the intake process.
Charity, as part of Gracefully Graying, I'm exploring a lot of issues, including elder care and guardianships. And these are very stressful times. And tell us a little bit about some of the scenarios. I mean, guardianship is where really someone's rights are taken away, and a guardian is appointed to oversee many decisions of one's life and handling finances. And as far as elder care, it's often a decision: is someone going to move into a senior residence? Is someone going to be in assisted living? Is this a case where there should be memory care? So tell us about some of the complicated scenarios that the Oakland Mediation Center has been involved in these sad and almost often difficult areas, because often family members kind of agree to disagree over these heart-wrenching decisions, for lack of a better word.
We had a situation where mom and 2 siblings, there were 5 siblings in total, lived here in Oakland County. A couple of siblings lived in other areas of the country. One sibling actually lived over in Europe internationally. And mom had gotten to a point where she wasn't able to necessarily live independently, was the question. And what were we going to do about that? And so the conversation led to, how will the decisions be made for mom? What's that process going to look like? Who's going to be the primary caregiver? Who's going to be the ultimate decision maker? How will we handle communication about what's going on with mom? How will we handle disagreements that come up? How are we going to agree to resolve those going forward in the future? Who handles the money? Is it the same person that's taking care of mom? And as you mentioned earlier, sometimes siblings agree to disagree. So you need to talk about that.
Tell us a little bit about your volunteer services at the Oakland Mediation Center charity.
Our volunteers are the lifeblood of our organization. We couldn't do all of the amazing things without them. They come from all different walks of life. About 36% of our volunteers are attorneys that volunteer their time. The others, as I said, come from all walks of life, whether they be former educators, former business people, medical personnel. We have a wide range of cases that come to the Oakland Mediation Center. And so it's nice to have a variety of volunteers where you can choose someone who has a professional background in a particular subject matter, so that they know the right questions to ask and can kind of help guide you through the process.
Do the volunteers all become mediators, or are there other services they render as well?
There are other services that they can do. A lot of our mediators also provide coaching services for when we're doing our training for new mediators, and they coach those trainees through role plays and how to improve their skill sets. And then we also have volunteers here that help with clerical work and coordination activities to try and, we are a small nonprofit with lots of work. Our caseload has doubled over the last year and a half. And so those volunteers have really come in handy with helping with the increased caseload.
Charity, what are recruitment needs in this area?
We could really use some more volunteers. As I said, pre-pandemic, we were doing about 2,400 cases a year. Last year, we did 5,100 cases.
Wow.
So we've more than doubled our caseload, but we haven't more than doubled our volunteers. And so, like any other volunteer-based organization, 20% of our volunteers are doing 80% of the work and the volunteering. And so with such an explosion with our caseload, we could really use some volunteers, people who are altruistic, that want to give back to the community and do something meaningful, learn a little bit, add another skill set that, quite frankly, I consider to be a life skill and can help that person in their own life in a variety of ways.
What are the expectations for volunteer services, Charity?
As I mentioned earlier, mediating is a soft skill. If you don't use it, you lose it. So we require our mediators to do 4 hours of continuing advanced mediation education, which we provide 10 to 11 continuing education classes each year that they can choose from. And we offer that free to our mediators as a thank you for the time that they give back, because there's nothing more precious in life than your time. And so it's a huge gift that they're giving to the center and to the community. In addition to that, we ask them to mediate a minimum of 20 hours per year, which can be done in a few cases, or they can spread it out over several cases. They can do it over the summer if they're a snowbird and they're only here for a couple of months, or they can spread it out throughout the year. We really customize it, and they can come and go as they please.
What are the benefits of volunteering?
The benefits, it's really a very rewarding thing, because the service that we're providing really can be life-changing, and it can change the quality of life, particularly for an elder person. If you can get a family to agree and they're not living in a situation where everybody's fighting and everybody is on the same page, you can actually see it changing family dynamics, changing lives. So it's very rewarding. You learn a new skill set. A lot of times if somebody wants to volunteer, I'll sponsor them through the training in exchange for a 2-year service level agreement. So I'll pay for that, and then they walk away with a new skill set. There's a social aspect. A lot of our mediators, when the pandemic hit, that was the biggest hit for them, is they become friends with each other. We're a very familial environment. And so there's a social aspect where you make a lot of friends and can get that social time as well.
Charity, how does someone apply if they are interested in becoming a volunteer?
You can go to our website and inquire at info@mediation-omc.org, or there's a button on our website at www.mediation-omc.org, and you can inquire about that. And then Megan McCoy who is the manager of our volunteer services and education services program, will get in touch with you and talk about if you'd like to take a training and have us sponsor you, or if you would like to pay for a training and get your certificate immediately. Then we go through an application process. Megan will send an application. You fill it out, send in your resume. Once you have the appropriate training, she'll do a 30-minute interview to make sure that philosophically you are aligned with our philosophy with mediation here. Then we sign you up to our temporary roster. You do a 10-hour internship. And, we're observing you, making sure that you're a good fit for our organization, but you're also making sure that we're a good fit for you, because the most valuable thing you have is your time. And so we want to make sure that we're respecting your time and it's a good use of your time. So after those initial 10 hours, Megan will have a conversation with you. And if it's good fit, then we add you to our permanent roster. And if not, then we have a different conversation about how we can move forward as friends in a different way.
You raised a point. I want to hone in on that for a minute. You mentioned your philosophy of mediation. Tell us about that.
Well, there are different forms of mediation, different types of
Sure.
mediation. The state court, the Michigan State Court Administrative Office, requires the community dispute resolution centers to use what we call the facilitative model. And that model is where the mediator is truly just facilitating, guiding people through a process. They're not giving suggestions. They're not making recommendations to the court. So anybody who's mediating currently at OMC has to follow the facilitative model. It's required by SCAO. We are looking at adding potentially an evaluative model going forward that would not be covered by SCAO funding. Evaluative model is more where you're making suggestions and recommendations on what to do. But to answer your question, anybody mediating here has to be truly facilitative and not give any suggestions or legal advice or anything.
Okay, tell us now, Charity, about the housing program for issues stemming from COVID, which has really dominated our lives for over 2 years now.
This is a really exciting program that we just launched this year. The Oakland County Board of Commissioners gifted the community with a grant that we are partnering with Lakeshore Legal Aid and Legal Aid and Defender, where our three organizations, we have a legal services department here, are providing free legal services for anyone experiencing housing issues, foreclosure, eviction, utilities. As long as you are an Oakland County resident and you are having a housing issue or a utility issue that is a result of being impacted by COVID, which almost virtually everyone has, we can provide free legal services and represent you in court and help you out. And it doesn't matter income, socioeconomic status, nothing. You just have to be an Oakland County resident and have been affected by COVID.
So this is how the program works. How has it been received so far?
It has been received very positively. The community is very thankful. As you can imagine, people that are facing eviction and foreclosure are in it's desperate times for them, and they often can't afford a private attorney. So they're very thankful for that. The courts have been very responsive and very excited about that, because it's another service that they can offer to their community members to make sure that everyone in our community has access to justice. And that's really the goal behind the commissioners and the courts and our three organizations that have partnered to do this with the county, making sure that everyone in our community has access to justice regardless of their situation.
Charity, how can someone refer a case in this area?
You can contact the Oakland Mediation Center at 248-338-4280 and dial extension 211 for Ashley Turner. She is our Director of Legal Services. You can also send an email to info@mediation-omc.org, or you can go to our website at www.mediation-omc.org, and there's an open a case. And if you submit something through the website, it comes right to their email.
Now, you mentioned a huge number of mediations during this past year. If you broke them down, what are the areas that you've covered and what are the majority of cases, if you can tell that for our viewers?
A majority of our cases have been kind of a mix. We've seen a dramatic increase in landlord-tenant matters. We've seen a dramatic increase in divorce and parenting time issues, and elder care and guardianships. Those are the three case types that we have seen more than double throughout the last year and a half. And a lot of them are pandemic related.
Do you see this rising tide continuing through the coming year, through 2022? I guess we're halfway through it. So how has this year been? A very busy one?
It's been extremely busy. I think that we're going to increase our caseload again this year. And I think that that's for a few different reasons. I think that there's kind of a ripple effect post-pandemic for things that are, just kind of coming up now. But also, during the pandemic, when the state shut down, Oakland Mediation Center, we had just updated all of our infrastructure and we were able to flip the switch literally overnight. We started mediating cases the next day via
Wow.
Zoom. And we had been prepared for that. And so we were able to assist the courts and alleviate their dockets. And there were other areas of the state that were shut down for quite some time. And we kept things flowing here in Oakland County. We have great relationships with our courts. We work very well with our courts. And so we were able to keep things moving for Oakland County residents. And I think that the community and the courts have been very responsive to that and seeing how successful we were. I actually co-authored something for the State Bar Journal with Doug Van Ups on the model of how to do virtual mediation that was sent out nationally. And we served as kind of a model on how to do it the right way, if there is a right way, but best practices.
Congratulations to you. That's wonderful. What about the demographics of the volunteers? I mean, like gracefully graying, our demographics are 15 over with aging parents. Does that fit in the demographics of your volunteers, basically?
Most of our volunteers are retired and 50 plus. We are looking to diversify our roster so that it is more reflective of the community we serve. So we're looking to have some more retired volunteers that come from all different walks of life so that we can diversify our roster even more than we have over the last 5 years. And also potentially get some younger volunteers as well so that we have a constant flow as some of our volunteers age out. We've had some volunteers that have been here over 25 years volunteering their time. About 20% of our roster have been here for 15 to 20 years. It's a great organization to be a part of. I volunteered here myself from 1997 through 2005, left the state for a little while for a few years and then came back as a staff person. As you mentioned in the beginning, it's an incredible organization to be a part of.
Yes, it is. I mean, every contact I've had, and I've done interviews with possibly every director that you've had over the years. And I know you do wonderful work, and I've had mediation training with you as well. Are there any other services that are offered that we have not covered that you would like to share with our viewers before we sign off, Charity?
A big one that we started a few years ago is our low-cost legal services program. We had several people calling and saying, I'm conflicted out with legal aid, or I don't hit the mark and I'm not qualified to receive services because I make a couple $1,000s too much money, but I can't afford a private attorney, or I may not be able to send my child to baseball or pay my electric bill. So there was this segment of the community that's maybe 200 to 400% above the poverty line that really was struggling to get legal representation. So we started this low-cost legal services program. We have 3 different attorneys working with us currently. We're looking at adding a new one very shortly, and the fees are very low. It's based on income and family size. Everybody qualifies, but most people pay anywhere from $1 to $1.50 a minute for services, which is extremely low. And we're able to provide that service because of how successful our mediation and education services programs are.
Charity, how are costs involved? I mean, there must be some charges for all that you do. How does that work?
In regards to legal services or?
Mediation services.
Mediation services. So we are partially funded by the State Court Administrative Office. About 1/3 of our revenue for mediation services comes from the State Court Administrative Office. The rest are fee for service. So for a divorce case, some of our business cases, some of our more complex like guardianship cases, there would be fees involved in participating, but they're very low. If parties are indigent receiving any kind of state aid, food stamps, then we do waive the fee and we do the case for free for that individual, so that it's not a hardship on them. Again, making sure that everybody has access to these wonderful services.
Clearly, you're doing a wonderful job. More volunteers are needed. Again, who do they contact if they want to become a volunteer? Give us the information again.
Sure, you can contact Megan McCoy. She is the manager for volunteer services and education services. Her phone number is 248-338-4280, extension 210, or you can email her at mmccoy, that's MMCCOY, at mediation-omc.org. She's very responsive. Everybody loves Megan. Everybody gets a hug from Megan. So she'll be very responsive and a friendly voice on the other end of the phone and can answer any questions that you have.
Charity, we have a few more moments. Are there any final thoughts before we sign off?
I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about our programs with the community. You're always a very gracious host, and I thank you for that. We're always looking, as I said, for volunteers and for donations so that we can continue to keep costs low for the community, and partnerships across the community for referrals, organizations that want to have a steady stream of referrals. We would be thankful for any of those.
Charity, I want to thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Graying. And I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching Gracefully Graying. Please share this, and as we're trying to build our base of viewers, and again, the Oakland Mediation Center is doing such a wonderful job. Please view this and share this. Thank you again.